Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison walked into the grand hall of the Galactic Defense Academy with steady steps. The massive rooms stretched high above him, with walls made of gleaming metal and strange alien materials. Hundreds of seats filled. The space and every one of them was occupied by beings from across the galaxy. Today was the day humans would defend their military methods in front of the most important war council in known space. Jake carried a datapad filled with reports from human battles over the past 50 years. He had spent weeks preparing for this moment. The other species had requested this review after humans joined the Galactic Defense Force. They wanted to understand how such a young species had managed to win so many battles against stronger enemies. But Jake could tell from the whispers and sideways looks that many aliens were not impressed with what they had learned so far. At the front of the hall sat the three most powerful military leaders in the galaxy. Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian. Empire looked like a giant crystal sculpture that somehow moved and spoke. His people had ruled vast sections of space for over 1,000 years. Next to him sat Hive Commander Zack of the Vex Collective. The insect-like creature's 4 arms moved constantly as he sorted through data streams that flowed directly into his compound eyes. The third judge was Overseer Prism of the Lumerian Assembly. The being of pure energy shifted between different colors as it processed information at speeds no organic brain could match. Jake took his place at the speaker's podium and looked out at the crowd. Most of the faces staring back at him showed doubt or amusement. He spotted several human officers scattered throughout the seats, including Captain Lisa Brooks, who taught tactics at the academy. In the back row, he noticed a young cadet with short brown hair and serious eyes. The cadet wore the uniform of Earth's outer colonies and had the lean build of someone who had grown up in low gravity. Admiral Kethvar's voice rang out across the hall like crystal bells chiming together. Lieutenant Commander Morrison, we have reviewed the military records of your species with great interest. However, we must express our confusion at many of your tactical decisions. Perhaps you can help us understand why humans consistently make choices that appear to waste resources and endanger mission success. Jake nodded respectfully. I would be happy to explain our methods, Admiral. The Zephyrian leader gestured toward a large display screen that flickered to life behind him. Images of human battles filled the space, showing soldiers carrying wounded comrades and ships turning back to rescue damaged vessels. Your forces repeatedly abandoned strategic advantages to retrieve injured personnel. In the Battle of Kepler, Station your fleet gave up a winning position to evacuate a single damaged cruiser. This decision cost you 3 additional ships and delayed victory by 6 hours. Hive Commander Zack's mandibles clicked rapidly as he spoke. The Vex Collective has studied this pattern extensively. Human commanders consistently prioritize individual survival over collective success. During the Proxima Defense Your Ground, forces used 40% of their ammunition reserves to create cover for retreating civilians. A rational commander would have used those resources to destroy enemy positions. Overseer Prism's colors shifted to deep blue as it processed data. Our analysis shows that human military doctrine is based on emotional responses rather than logical calculations. Your species appears incapable of making the mathematical decisions necessary for efficient warfare. You save the few at the cost of the many. Jake felt his jaw tighten but kept his voice calm. Respectfully, Admiral, these decisions saved lives and ultimately led to victory in every case you mentioned. By accident, Admiral Kethvar replied with what might have been a laugh. Your victories succeed despite your methods, not because of them. A species that abandons tactical advantage for sentimental reasons will eventually face an enemy that exploits this weakness. The hall filled with murmurs of agreement from alien observers. Jake heard several species discussing human tactics in their native languages. None of the comments sounded complimentary. He glanced toward Captain Brooks, who gave him an encouraging nod, but he could see the concern in her eyes. Furthermore, Hive Commander Zack continued while calling up new images on the display. Human units consistently refuse to accept acceptable casualty rates. In the Titan Valley campaign, your forces spent 2 days evacuating a position that could have been abandoned in 2 hours. The delay allowed enemy reinforcements to arrive and resulted in a prolonged engagement. Jake opened his datapad and began, pulling up his prepared responses. The soldiers we evacuated from Titan Valley included specialists with irreplaceable knowledge of enemy technology. Their intelligence led directly to our breakthrough 3 weeks later. Overseer Prism's colors shifted to yellow, a calculation that could not have been made during the tactical situation. You are applying hindsight to justify emotional decision-making. More murmurs rippled through the crowd, and Jake could hear the skepticism growing. He had expected this reception, but it still stung to have his species' greatest victories dismissed as lucky accidents. He was about to respond when a voice cut through the noise from the back of the hall. "Sir, permission to speak?" Every head in the massive room turned toward the young cadet who had stood up in the back row. Jake recognized him now as Ryan Parker from the outer colonies. The young man had only been at the academy for a few months, but he had already impressed several instructors with his unconventional thinking. Admiral Kethvar's crystal form shifted slightly. "This is a formal review, Cadet. Return to your seat." Ryan remained standing. "With respect, Admiral, I have a question for the Council." Captain Brooks started to rise from her seat, but Jake held up a hand. Something in the cadet's voice made him want to hear what the young man had to say. The scars on Ryan's face told a story that Jake recognized from too many colony reports. "What is your question, Cadet?" Jake asked. Ryan stepped forward into the aisle and looked directly at the 3 alien judges. "You ever fought for survival? Not for territory, not for resources, not for expansion, but for the right to exist?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Admiral Kethvar's crystal form seemed to dim slightly while Hive Commander Zach's clicking stopped entirely. Overseer Prism cycled through several colors before settling on a confused purple. "I do not understand the relevance of this question," Admiral Kethvar said slowly. Ryan's voice remained steady, but Jake could hear an edge underneath. "Every tactic. You just criticized every decision you called wasteful. Every choice you said was emotional. I lived through all of that on Proxima Centauri. And I can tell you something about human military doctrine that your databases probably don't show." The hall had gone completely silent. Even the alien observers had stopped their whispered conversations. Jake felt his pulse quicken as he realized this young cadet was about to say something that would change the entire tone of the review. "Permission to continue, Admiral?" Ryan asked, looking directly at Jake. Jake nodded slowly. "Granted, Cadet. The floor is yours." Ryan Parker walked slowly down the aisle toward the front of the Great Hall. Every step echoed in the silence as hundreds of alien eyes tracked his movement. He had not planned to speak today. He had come to watch and learn like any other cadet. But listening to the 3 judges dismiss human tactics as primitive and emotional had awakened something inside him that he could not ignore. Admiral Kethvar's crystal body reflected the lights of the hall as he leaned forward. "Cadet Parker, you will address the council with proper respect. This is not a classroom debate." Ryan stopped walking and stood at attention. "Yes, sir. But with permission, I think the council is missing something important about why humans fight. The way we do." Hive Commander Zach's 4 arms moved in agitation. "We have analyzed thousands of human engagements. Our understanding is quite complete." "Have you ever been hungry, sir?" Ryan asked suddenly. "Not just wanting food, but actually starving? Have you ever had to choose between saving medicine for your sick child or using it to trade for ammunition? Have you ever had to decide which of your friends to leave behind because you can only carry 1 wounded person?" The alien judges exchanged glances. Overseer Prism flickered through several colors before responding. "The Lumarian Assembly has existed for 3,000 years. We have never faced resource scarcity. The Zephyrian Empire spans 40 star systems," Admiral Kethvar added. We have not experienced shortage in recorded history. Ryan nodded as if he had expected these answers. The Vex Collective has billions of drones. When you lose 1,000 soldiers, it barely shows up in your statistics. But humans, we started with just one planet. When Earth sent out colony ships, each one carried maybe 50,000 people. That was it. No backup, no reinforcements, no second chances. Jake Morrison watched from his position at the podium as the young cadet began pacing back and forth. There was something raw and honest in Ryan's voice that commanded attention. Even the alien observers had stopped their whispered conversations to listen. "You want to know why we never leave wounded behind?" Ryan continued. "It is not because we are emotional. It is because we learned early that every single person might be the one who saves everyone else. The injured engineer who can fix your life support. The wounded pilot who knows how to navigate an asteroid field. The dying medic who can teach someone else how to stop bleeding." Captain Brooks leaned forward in her seat. She had read Ryan's file when he arrived at the academy. Proxima Centauri colony had been attacked by unknown raiders 3 years ago. Only a few hundred survivors had made it off-planet. "On my homeworld we had a saying," Ryan said, stopping his pacing to look directly at Admiral Kethvar. "Every person is a universe. When someone dies, you lose everything they know, everything they have learned, everything they might discover. Big empires with billions of people can afford to lose universes. Humans learned we could not." Hive Commander Zach's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "You are suggesting that resource scarcity drove the development of your tactical preferences?" I am saying that when you have 50,000 people trying to build a life on a hostile planet, you learn real fast that wasting people is the fastest way to die," Ryan replied. "You call our tactics emotional, but they are not. They are mathematical. Just different math than yours." Ryan pulled out a small data pad and activated it. A holographic display appeared showing population numbers and survival statistics. Earth's first colony ships had a 60% failure rate, not because of equipment problems or navigation errors, because they did not understand the math of small populations. The numbers floating in the air showed colony after colony failing when they reached critical population thresholds. Jake recognized the data from his own military history classes, but seeing it presented this way gave it new meaning. "When you have unlimited resources, you can use people like ammunition," Ryan continued. "Send 1,000 soldiers to take a position, and if you lose half of them, you call it victory. But when you only have 1,000 people total, losing half means everyone dies. So you learn to fight different. You learn to make every person count." Admiral Kethvar's crystal form seemed to pulse with inner light as he processed this information. "You are claiming that human tactical doctrine evolved from necessity rather than choice." "Not claiming, sir. Stating. Every tactic you criticized today has roots in colony survival. We evacuate wounded because colonies that abandoned their injured did not have enough healthy people left to maintain life support. We spend resources on rescue operations because colonies that wrote people off as dead lost essential skills and knowledge." Ryan gestured toward the display screen where images from human battles still showed. "Look at the Battle of Kepler Station. Again, you said we gave up tactical advantage to save one damaged cruiser, but that cruiser carried the only xenobiologist in the fleet. 2 weeks later, when we encountered the plague on Kepler's third moon, that xenobiologist saved 30,000 lives." The hall erupted in surprised murmurs. Jake realized that the alien judges had focused on immediate tactical costs without considering long-term strategic value. It was exactly the kind of thinking that came from having unlimited populations to draw from. Overseer Prism shifted to a bright orange color. "The information about the xenobiologist was not included in our tactical analysis, because your analysis focused on ship counts and casualty rates," Ryan said. "You measured success by how efficiently we destroyed the enemy, but humans measure success by how many of our people survive to fight another day. Different goals, different math, Hive Commander Zach's forearms stopped moving as he accessed data streams. Are you suggesting that all human tactical decisions can be explained through population preservation mathematics? Ryan shook his head. No, sir. I am suggesting that human tactical decisions come from being a species that had to learn survival. Before we learned war, every alien species in this room evolved from civilizations that conquered others. Humans evolved from colonies that had to survive against everything the universe threw at them. Jake felt a surge of pride as he watched. This young cadet articulates something that experienced officers had struggled to explain for years. Ryan was not just defending human tactics. He was revealing the philosophical foundation that made them work. You asked if I ever fought for survival, Ryan said, addressing the three judges directly. Every human has. Even the ones born on Earth. Grow up hearing stories of the colony ships, of people who died so their children could live, of communities that survived impossible odds by refusing to abandon anyone who could still contribute. The cadet took a deep breath and looked around. The vast hall. You see waste and emotion where we see investment and mathematics. You see inefficiency where we see insurance. You see weakness where we see the strength that comes from knowing that everyone matters. Admiral Kethvar was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a note of uncertainty that had not been there before. What you describe suggests that human military doctrine is not inferior, but simply based on different parameters. Yes, sir, Ryan replied. Parameters that come from learning to survive before learning to conquer. Ryan Parker stood in the center of the Great Hall with all eyes fixed on him. The weight of attention from hundreds of alien observers should have been overwhelming, but he felt strangely calm. He had carried the story of Proxima Centauri inside him for 3 years without ever speaking about it in detail. Now it seemed like the right time to let it out. You want to understand human tactics? Ryan asked, looking directly at the three judges. Let me tell you about the day I learned them. He activated his data pad again, and the holographic display shifted to show a star map. A small red dot marked the location of Proxima Centauri. Proxima. Colony was established 18 years ago. Standard Earth colony ship carrying 50,000 people. Farmers, miners, engineers, teachers. Regular people looking for a new start. The display zoomed in to show a planet covered in green continents and blue oceans. Small settlements dotted the surface, connected by transportation networks. It looked peaceful and prosperous. The colony was doing well, Ryan continued. We had sustainable agriculture, working mines, and even started manufacturing some of our own equipment. Population had grown to about 55,000, including kids born on planet. Everyone thought we had made it. Admiral Kethvar leaned forward in his crystal chair. What changed? Unknown raiders, Ryan said simply. Never found out who they were or where they came from. They hit us on a Tuesday night local time. No warning, no communication, just started bombing population centers. The peaceful image on the display suddenly filled with red indicators showing attack vectors and damage zones. Jake Morrison felt his chest tighten as he recognized the tactical situation. He had seen similar patterns in dozens of colony raids over the years. How many raiders? Hive Commander Zach asked. Best guess is about 500 soldiers with air support and orbital weapons, Ryan replied. Professional military unit with advanced equipment, against our security force of 12 guards with hunting rifles. Overseer Prism flickered between several colors. The mathematical odds would suggest immediate surrender or evacuation. That is what I thought too, Ryan said with a bitter smile. I was 16 years old working in the mining office when the attack started. My first instinct was to run and hide, wait for the cavalry to arrive. But there was no cavalry. The nearest Galactic Defense Force base was 6 months away, even if they had gotten a distress signal. The display showed population centers being systematically destroyed. Green dots representing settlements turned red one by one as the attack progressed. The raiders seem to be following standard doctrine, Ryan continued. Destroy infrastructure, eliminate organized resistance, force surrender through overwhelming firepower, textbook conquest operation. Should have been over in 6 hours. Jake found himself holding his breath as he watched the tactical display. He knew how this story ended, but seeing it unfold in real time made it feel immediate and urgent. But something funny happened, Ryan said. The colonists did not follow standard doctrine either. Instead of surrendering, they started doing things that made no tactical sense, at least not to anyone who had not studied human survival mathematics. The display zoomed in on a settlement under attack. Red markers showed raider positions advancing toward a cluster of buildings where colonists had taken shelter. The raiders expected the defenders to fortify the strongest buildings and make them fight for every room, Ryan explained. Instead, the colonists abandoned the strong positions and fell back to the community center. From a military standpoint, it was suicide. The community center had no defensive value, just a big open space with lots of windows. Hive Commander Zach's 4 arms moved in confusion. Why would they choose such a poor defensive position? Because the community center had the colony's only backup power generator and medical supplies, Ryan answered. The colonists were not thinking about holding territory. They were thinking about keeping people alive. Every wounded person who made it to the community center could be treated and potentially returned to the fight. The display showed how the colonists had turned the community center into a combination hospital and command post. Instead of soldiers holding static positions, they had teams moving constantly between buildings, bringing back wounded and collecting supplies. The raiders kept expecting organized resistance, Ryan continued. Military units with clear command structure and defensive lines. Instead, they faced something they had never seen before. 50,000 people who all understood that everyone needed to survive. Admiral Kethavar's crystal form pulsed with interest. Explain what you mean by everyone understanding. Colony life teaches you things that people from big civilizations do not learn, Ryan said. When you live in a small community, you know that the person fixing your water recycling system might be the same one who delivers your food and teaches your kids. Everyone has multiple jobs. Everyone is essential. The tactical display showed how this played out during the battle. Instead of military specialists, the defenders included farmers who knew how to make explosives from fertilizer, miners who could tunnel under raider positions, engineers who could turn mining equipment into weapons, teachers who could coordinate communications between scattered groups. The raiders destroyed our communication center in the first hour, Ryan said. Standard tactic to prevent coordinated defense. But they did not realize that our school teachers had been running emergency drills for years. Every adult in the colony knew the backup communication procedures. Jake watched as the display showed how information flowed through the battle. Instead of military radio networks, the colonists used everything from mining intercoms to agricultural sensors to coordinate their defense. On the second day, the raiders tried to force surrender by attacking the hospital, Ryan continued. They figured that threatening the wounded would make us give up. Instead, it turned every single colonist into a combatant. The display showed what happened next. The raiders had been fighting a few hundred active defenders. When they threatened the hospital, they suddenly faced 50,000 angry people who would do anything to protect their families. That was when I learned what human tactics really mean, Ryan said quietly. My job was supposed to be simple. Stay in the community center and help coordinate supply runs. But when the raiders started shelling the hospital, I found myself crawling through ventilation shafts to plant charges in their ammunition depot. The hall was completely silent now. Even the alien observers seemed to understand that they were hearing something profound. I was not trained for combat, Ryan continued. Never held a weapon before that day, but I knew those people in the hospital. Old Man Chen, who taught me mathematics, Sarah Martinez, who delivered my little sister, Dr. Kim, who fixed my broken arm when I was 12. They were not statistics or acceptable losses. They were my community. Ryan gestured toward the tactical display where the battle continued to unfold. The raiders had better weapons, better training, and better equipment. but they were fighting for conquest while we were fighting for survival. Different motivations, different mathematics. What was the final outcome? Overseer Prism asked in colors that suggested deep curiosity. The Raiders won, Ryan said simply. They had orbital weapons and unlimited ammunition. After 6 days of fighting, they leveled everything from space. But by then, we had evacuated most of the population to hidden shelters. Out of 55,000 people, we lost about 12,000. The Raiders probably expected to capture a working colony and got a pile of rubble with a few hundred prisoners. He paused and looked around the hall. The survivors spent 8 months in those shelters before rescue arrived. 8 months with limited food and no outside contact. We made it because everyone contributed. The wounded engineer who designed better water purification, the elderly farmer who knew which plants were safe to eat, the traumatized child who remembered where emergency supplies were hidden. Jake realized that Ryan had just described the perfect example of human tactical thinking. Not just the battle itself, but the long-term survival that followed. Every decision focused on preserving people rather than territory or resources. You saved the community by destroying it, Admiral Kethvar observed. No, sir, Ryan corrected. We saved the community by understanding that buildings are just buildings. Communities are made of people. Admiral Kethvar rose from his crystal throne with a sound like wind chimes in a storm. The entire hall watched as the massive alien leader considered what he had just heard. His crystalline form reflected the lights of the chamber in patterns that shifted with his thoughts. Cadet Parker. Your testimony is compelling, the Admiral said finally. However, understanding the reasoning behind human tactics does not prove their effectiveness against conventional military doctrine. Jake Morrison stepped forward from his position at the podium. What are you proposing, Admiral? A demonstration, Kethvar replied. Real-time tactical simulation. Human methods against proven alien strategy. Equal resources. Survival scenario. Murmurs rippled through the assembled observers. This was unprecedented. The Galactic Defense. Academy's war games were usually training exercises, not formal tests of species doctrine. Hive Commander Zach's mandibles clicked rapidly as he processed the implications. The parameters would need to be carefully controlled, Zach said. Both sides must have identical starting conditions. Overseer Prism flickered through several colors before settling on blue. I propose a colony defense scenario, limited resources, no reinforcements, mixed military and civilian population. Ryan felt his pulse quicken. This was exactly the kind of situation where human tactics had been forged. Who would command the teams? Admiral Kethvar gestured toward the great display screen at the front of the hall. I will lead the alien coalition forces. We will employ standard galactic military doctrine refined over thousands of years of successful campaigns. He paused and looked directly at Ryan. You, Cadet Parker, will lead the human team. If your species' methods are truly superior, then you should be able to demonstrate their effectiveness. Captain Lisa Brooks stood up quickly. Admiral, with respect, Cadet Parker has not completed advanced tactical training. Perhaps a more experienced officer should— No, Jake Morrison interrupted. Ryan understands these tactics better than any of us. He lived them. The hall erupted in conversations as alien observers discussed this unexpected turn. Ryan felt a moment of panic as the weight of representing his entire species settled on his shoulders. Then he remembered the faces of the people who had died on Proxima Centauri, and the panic faded into determination. I accept, Ryan said clearly, but I choose my own team. Granted, Admiral Kethvar replied. You have 10 minutes to select. Your advisors. Ryan looked around the hall and pointed to Captain Brooks. Lisa, you know Academy resources better than anyone. He turned toward Jake Morrison. Commander Morrison, you have actual combat experience with mixed forces. Finally, he pointed to a surprised-looking alien in the observer section. Commander Thex of the Altarian Republic, your people specialize in defensive engineering. The blue-skinned Altarian looked shocked to be chosen, but nodded acceptance. I am honored by the selection. The simulation chamber was a massive, spherical room with holographic projectors that could create realistic battlefield environments. Ryan and his team stood on one side of the control center, while Admiral Kethvar assembled his advisors on the other. The alien coalition included military specialists from 6 different species, each bringing their own expertise. Beginning tactical. Scenario, announced the Academy's computer system. Colony World Gamma 7 under siege. Population 40,000 mixed civilian and security personnel. Limited orbital defenses. Enemy force approaching with overwhelming firepower. The holographic environment materialized around them, showing a world with 3 major settlements connected by transport networks. Mountains, forests, and rivers created. Natural barriers and choke points. Ryan studied the terrain while his mind automatically calculated resource flows and population distributions. Alien team, you have command of the attacking force, the computer continued. 1 heavy cruiser, 6 support vessels, 2,000 elite soldiers, advanced weapons and equipment, mission parameters, capture or destroy the colony within 70. 2 hours. Admiral Kethvar's crystal form gleamed as he reviewed the tactical options. His advisors quickly identified key strategic points and began planning their assault. The alien approach was methodical and logical. Establish orbital superiority. Target infrastructure. Force surrender through overwhelming pressure. Human team, you command the defending force, the computer announced. Minimal orbital defenses, 800 security personnel, 37,000 civilians, limited heavy weapons, mission parameters, survive and maintain colony function. Ryan closed his eyes for a moment and tried to think like a colonist rather than a military officer. The numbers looked impossible from a conventional standpoint, but he had seen impossible odds overcome before. Lisa, what are our manufacturing capabilities? He asked. Captain Brooks consulted her display. Standard colony industrial base, mining equipment, agricultural machinery, basic fabrication units. Commander Morrison, what kind of training do the security forces have? Typical colony guards, Jake replied. Police work, crowd control, some combat experience but mostly peacekeeping. Ryan nodded and turned to Commander Thex. Can your people help us dig? The Altarian's blue skin shifted to a lighter shade, indicating confusion. Dig what? Everything, Ryan answered. The alien team is going to follow standard doctrine, orbital bombardment followed by ground assault. They will target infrastructure and population centers, so we make those targets worthless. The alien observers watched in fascination as Ryan began implementing tactics that seemed to contradict everything they understood about military strategy. Instead of fortifying strong positions, the human team started evacuating them. Instead of concentrating forces, they scattered them across the planet. Admiral Kethvar initiated his attack with precision strikes against communication centers, transportation hubs, and government buildings. The standard approach that had worked for 1,000 years against 100 different species. But when his forces moved to exploit the chaos, they found empty buildings and abandoned installations. Where are the defenders? Demanded General Voss of the Centaurian Empire, who served as Kethvar's ground commander. The alien coalition had expected to fight for control of key installations. Instead, they found themselves occupying empty structures while the actual population had melted, away into hidden shelters and underground facilities that had not existed on their initial scans. They are implementing dispersal doctrine, observed Admiral Kethvar, attempting to avoid decisive engagement. But Ryan was not avoiding engagement. He was changing the rules of what engagement meant. While the alien forces secured empty buildings, human teams were sabotaging supply lines, disrupting communications, and generally making life difficult for the occupying forces. This is not military strategy, complained Commander Zisk of the Vegan Confederation. This is chaos. No, said Hive Commander Zack thoughtfully. This is what the cadet described: population preservation mathematics. They are not trying to win territory. They are trying to outlast us. The simulation continued through its first day, with the alien forces controlling every major installation on the planet. By conventional measures, they had achieved total victory. But the colony was still functioning. Hidden manufacturing centers continued producing supplies. Concealed command posts coordinated defensive operations. The population remained intact and capable of resistance. Time acceleration to day 2, announced the computer. That was when Ryan's real strategy became apparent. The colonists had not been hiding. They had been preparing. Every piece of mining equipment had been converted into weapons or fortifications. Every farmer had become a saboteur who knew the local terrain better than any invasion force could learn. Every teacher had become a communications specialist, coordinating between scattered resistance cells. The alien forces found themselves fighting an enemy that was everywhere and nowhere. When they moved to secure one area, the humans would strike somewhere else. When they tried to establish supply lines, they would find their equipment sabotaged by people who had helped build it in the first place. This is not sustainable, Admiral Kethvar observed. They cannot maintain this level of activity indefinitely. But as the simulation moved into its third day, it became clear that the humans did not need to maintain it indefinitely. They just needed to survive long enough for the alien forces to exhaust their resources. Every day the invaders controlled empty buildings was a day they were not achieving their actual objectives. Simulation complete, the computer announced. Final analysis. Colony population 91% intact, infrastructure 60% functional. Attacking force mission parameters not achieved within specified time frame. The hall erupted in surprised conversations. The alien coalition had won every tactical engagement, controlled every strategic location, and suffered minimal casualties. But they had failed to accomplish their actual mission of capturing or destroying the colony. Admiral Kethvar stared at the tactical display in obvious confusion. How is this possible? We achieved complete military superiority. Ryan walked over, to stand beside the alien leader. You achieved superiority over buildings and installations, but colonies are not made of buildings. They are made of people. The Great Hall remained silent for several long moments after the simulation ended. Hundreds of alien observers stared at the tactical display, showing the final results. Every conventional measure indicated that Admiral Kethvar's forces had achieved overwhelming victory, yet the mission had failed completely. Hive Commander Zack was the first to speak. His forearms moved in patterns that indicated deep thought processing. The human team sacrificed every strategic advantage yet maintained operational capability. This contradicts established military theory. No, said Admiral Kethvar slowly. It reveals a gap in our understanding of what victory actually means. The crystal being rose from his chair and walked toward the display screen. His massive form reflected the holographic images showing the colony that still functioned despite being completely occupied by enemy forces. We conquered territory, Admiral Kethvar continued. We destroyed infrastructure. We eliminated organized resistance. By every metric, we had achieved success, but the colony continued to exist. Ryan stepped forward. Because you were fighting the wrong war, sir. You were trying to capture buildings and installations. We were fighting to keep our people alive and capable of rebuilding. Overseer Prism flickered through several colors before settling on a bright yellow that indicated understanding. The human team redefined the victory conditions without informing the opposing force. We did not redefine anything, Captain Brooks interjected. We just focused on what actually mattered. Territory can be retaken. Buildings can be rebuilt. Infrastructure can be replaced. But if you lose your people, you lose everything. Jake Morrison activated his data pad and brought up historical records. This pattern appears throughout human military history. The London Blitz during Earth's Second World War, the siege of Stalingrad, the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. Humans have consistently chosen to preserve population over preserving territory. Commander Thex of the Altarian Republic raised a blue hand. But this creates a fundamental problem. If both sides employ human tactics, then conflicts become wars of attrition that could last indefinitely. Only if both sides start with equal populations, Ryan replied. Remember the original premise. Humans developed these tactics because we were always outnumbered. Small colonies against hostile environments. Limited populations against unlimited challenges. We learned to fight as if every person was irreplaceable because for us they were. The alien observers began discussing this revelation among themselves. Species that had evolved with massive populations and unlimited resources had never faced the mathematical constraints that shaped human thinking. They could afford to trade lives for tactical advantage because they had surplus lives to trade. Admiral Kethavar gestured toward the display screen. Show me the resource expenditure analysis. The tactical display shifted to show comparative costs for both forces during the simulation. The alien team had used ammunition and equipment at standard rates following established doctrine. The human team had improvised weapons, recycled materials, and maximized the utility of every available resource. Fascinating, murmured General Voss of the Centaurian Empire. The human forces achieved higher efficiency per unit of material expended. Because we learned to waste nothing, Ryan explained. Every bullet, every tool, every piece of equipment might be the difference between survival and extinction. Colonies that were wasteful died out. The ones that survived passed on conservative resource management to their children. Hive Commander Zach's mandibles clicked rapidly. Are you suggesting that human military effectiveness derives from scarcity-based evolutionary pressure? I am suggesting that humans fight like we are endangered because we remember being endangered, Ryan answered. Every tactical decision reflects the knowledge that there might not be reinforcements coming. No backup plan. No second chances. Jake Morrison stepped forward. The implications go beyond military tactics. Human civilian populations consistently show higher survival rates during disasters because everyone learns basic emergency skills. Human colonies achieve independence faster because everyone contributes to essential functions. The display screen shifted again, showing comparative data on colony success rates across different species. Human settlements showed remarkable consistency in achieving sustainable populations even under adverse conditions. Colony survival is not just about having enough people, Captain Brooks added. It is about having the right distribution of skills and knowledge. Humans learned early that losing specialists could doom entire communities. Admiral Kethavar turned to face Ryan directly. Your species treats individual lives as strategic resources rather than tactical units. Yes, sir, Ryan replied, because that is what they are. Every person represents decades of accumulated knowledge and experience, training and relationships, capabilities that cannot be quickly replaced. Overseer Prism's colors shifted to deep blue. This creates interesting possibilities for collaborative operations. Human forces could provide population preservation expertise, while alien forces provide conventional military capabilities. Already happening, Jake Morrison said with a slight smile. Human officers have been attached to Galactic Defense Force units specifically to advise on civilian evacuation and survival protocols. The hall filled with the sound of alien languages as observers discussed the implications among themselves. What had started as a review of questionable human tactics had become a revelation about alternative approaches to military thinking. Commander Thex approached Ryan with obvious curiosity. Would human tactics work for species with larger populations? Ryan considered the question carefully. Some elements, yes. Resource conservation, cross-training, flexible command structures. But the core philosophy only makes sense if you truly believe that every individual matters. And humans believe this because you have no choice, Admiral Kethvar observed. We believe it because we learned it was true, Ryan corrected. The colonies that treated people as expendable failed. The ones that treated every life as precious survived. Natural selection at the civilizational level. Hive Commander Zach accessed several data streams simultaneously. I am reviewing Galactic Defense Force operational reports. Human units consistently achieve mission success with lower casualty rates. Because we define mission success differently, Captain Brooks explained. Completing the objective matters, but so does bringing everyone home. Both goals shape our tactical decisions. The discussion continued for another hour as alien military leaders grappled with concepts that challenged their fundamental assumptions about warfare. Species that had conquered their way to greatness found themselves learning from a species that had survived its way to competence. Finally, Admiral Kethvar called for order. This review has provided valuable insights into human military doctrine. I propose that the Galactic Defense Academy establish a new curriculum studying survival-based tactical theory. Applause rippled through the hall as alien observers showed their approval. Ryan felt a surge of pride mixed with exhaustion. He had not expected to defend his entire species when he woke up that morning. Furthermore, Admiral Kethvar continued, Cadet Parker will be offered immediate commissioning to help develop this new program. Ryan shook his head. With respect, sir, I would prefer to complete my training first. There is still a lot I need to learn. What you need to learn is how to teach others what you already know, Jake Morrison said, stepping forward. The Academy needs officers who understand both human and alien tactical thinking. As the formal session ended and beings began filing out of the Great Hall, Captain Brooks approached Ryan with a thoughtful expression. You realize what you did today? You changed how the galaxy thinks about warfare. Ryan looked back at the tactical display still showing the results of the simulation. I just told them about Proxima Centauri, about people who refused to give up even when giving up made sense. That is exactly what they needed to hear, Jake Morrison added. For too long, military doctrine has focused on how to destroy enemies. Maybe it is time to focus on how to preserve friends. Admiral Kethvar's crystal form approached the small group of humans. Cadet Parker, I have one final question. Do you believe human tactical methods can be taught to species that did not evolve under the same constraints? Ryan thought about the question for a moment. The specific tactics, maybe, but the philosophy behind them requires understanding that every person in your unit might be the one who saves everyone else tomorrow. That is not something you can learn from a textbook. Then we will have to learn it through experience, Admiral Kethvar replied. Starting today, human survival protocols will be integrated into all Galactic Defense Force training programs. The Academy will establish mixed species units to study collaborative tactical development. As the Great Hall finally emptied, Ryan found himself alone with his thoughts and the holographic display. The images of the colony defense simulation faded, leaving only the quiet hum of the Academy's systems. He thought about the people of Proxima Centauri who had died so others could live. Their sacrifice had seemed pointless at the time, but today it had changed the future of galactic military doctrine. Perhaps that was the most human thing of all, turning survival into victory, making meaning from loss, ensuring that no sacrifice was ever truly waste.